Hey everybody, Brett Rice with Core Vision Financial Group. Here today again with another video, adding to our library here on our YouTube channel. Hey, we ask that you go to our YouTube channel and subscribe so you're notified when we post new videos. Today we're going to be joined by Angie Sodrel out of the Bargersville Core Vision office. She's going to join us for the first time on the podcast today, so this is a pretty exciting time for us. Have a new guest on here. So what we're going to do real quick is we're going to ask Angie to introduce herself, give us a little bio on her, and then we'll jump right into the topic today.
Hi, this is my name is Angie Sodrel, and I have been working in the business for about 30 years, going on my 30th year between banking and investments. I came onto Core Vision recently, and I'm pretty excited about working with the group. The Bargersville office is right by Chicago's Pizza, which is pretty well known there in Bargersville, which is kind of the Center Grove area. I work with another gentleman named Bill Robertson, and we have an office there, and then an assistant named Nanette, and you can see us right from 135 right there in Bargersville. And we're pretty excited. We've got some good things, just trying to build, get the community aware that we're in that area and that we're a local advisor in the community, and just working to try to build up our names there in that area. Yeah, so I grew up in Greenwood. I went to Greenwood High School. I'm not going to say what year I graduated, but I grew up in Greenwood, lived there all my life, and worked pretty much in that Greenwood area ever since I started working. So,
all right, so today our topic is public service loan forgiveness through student loans, that direct student loans that people take that they're hoping to get loan forgiveness on.
Yep.
So let's talk about some of the details on that, right? Because I'm sure there's probably a bunch of qualifications that the federal government's looking for, right?
Yeah, so this is basically if you have outstanding student loan debt and you've had that student loan debt, you make 120 payments, and that started in 2007. So if you made, and it's for public servants, so basically teachers, firefighters, military, hospital, people that work in hospitals. There are different qualifications. It's more about the employer than the employee, but I think there's also healthcare, first responders. Those are kind of all kinds of those public servants that would qualify, and then you go to the employer. So there is a tool online that you can search and make sure your employer qualifies for that, and if they do, then that's when you kind of go to the next step. And most of your teachers, organization, people, firefighters, those employers are going to qualify. It's more about if it's not a nonprofit, 501(c), but it has the background of a public service, even though it's not a non-for-profit, it may still qualify. You also have your state, your local, your federal government entities that are probably eligible. AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, religious organizations, those type of organizations or employers are going to probably be on that list.
And there's a tool, right, online you can go into and kind of figure out if your employer makes you eligible.
Yeah, so you click on that tool, and then you can just put in the federal tax ID number that's like on your W-2. That way you don't have to worry about IU Medical has 6 different ones. Put in that tax ID number, and then it'll show you that yes, they qualify. Then the next step is filling out the application.
I wondered about that. So this morning I was reading through this and I went to the website, and I didn't go into the tool, but I saw that there was a tool to help figure out if your employer made you eligible, and I was like, I wonder how they do that. The tax ID number probably makes that super easy.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest way.
Yeah, so that's great. So what I looked this morning, and you covered a lot of these, 501(c)(3)s, federal, state, local, military, not-for-profits, and religious organizations, I believe, are kind of the general ones, but I think the easiest way is if you're like, well, I work for a nonprofit, I wonder if they put in that tax ID number and that that tool is going to help spit out, an answer that's going to tell you whether you're eligible or not.
Correct.
So that's qualification 1. Do you work for an employer that makes you eligible? Qualification number 2 is the number of payments you've made.
Right, 120 payments, and with the COVID relief because of the pandemic, they actually are counting the forbearance years. So a lot of student loans people haven't been having to pay them for the last year and a half. It doesn't start back up until September of this year. Those months actually count. So those months count, and let's say someone's been a teacher for 10 years, and it was after 2007. They might have, obviously it's 2022, they have to apply by October. This is only, all these waivers are only through October. And that is the forbearance, where if you haven't been making payments, they're going to still count towards your 120 payments. What happens is also those temporary changes end in October, so you need to get your application in by October.
So the way I understand it, payments from March 20th through March 2020 to August 2022, which I think that's like 28 or 29 months, count towards those 120 payments. So
That's
as
right.
long as you have previously been making payments, you weren't in default, you've been making payments on time, direct student loans, you got to meet quite a few qualifications in order to
Yes.
apply or to qualify for this.
Right, you have to you have to have made those payments working full-time over 30 hours a week.
Right.
You have to still be employed. So let's say someone taught for 10 years, took a break, you have to be employed for those, for that to come into play. And then after October of 07. So you have all those criteria, and even if you're unsure, what you can do is print the application. What happens is you go to each employer. So let's say you've only had one employer with over 10 years, you think you've made 120 payments, you're not sure, you have one employer, you fill out the form, you get your employer to sign off on it, you send it in. They're gonna come back and say, okay, you've made 119 payments, you have one more payment left. While you're doing the application, you actually don't have to make payments, but right now it's stopped anyways. But when you fill out the application, you don't have to make those payments. The other thing is that, let's say you have 3 different employers. You work somewhere 5 years, you work somewhere 3 years, you work somewhere 2 years, or made 120 payments. You could have worked 5 years but made double payments. If you made 120 payments, that actually could count. So you just get the employers to sign off on it, you send it in, then you're gonna get notice back from them, and they've actually been working fairly quickly. I have personal experience with a client that started in May, and her loan was just forgiven. So she was
Amazing.
a teacher, she worked for a non-for-profit for a couple of years, Wheeler Mission, then she worked as a teacher the last several years, and she owed $23,000 on her student loans, and she just got notified that it was forgiven.
Yeah, so I think you touched on a great point a second ago, is if you think you might apply, let's let them decide whether you don't just say, oh, I don't. No, let's go through the qualifications, and if you're meeting those, let's fill out the form, let's use the tools, let's say, hey, we're gonna submit an application, and they're gonna tell us that you're not eligible, right? We're not gonna sit here and be like, oh, I don't think you're eligible. If we feel like you meet all those criteria.
Right. The other thing is they'll give you the steps. So I have a different client that hers weren't all under the federal, but she could get them under they had her move the account, gave her the form to move those loans to them. Then they're basically getting all her employment verified. And so, she's just waiting, but she will probably be forgiven because she's been doing this a lot longer than the other person I helped. So
yeah, so that's another great point, because that's one of the qualifications is these all have to be direct loans. So if you have loans that aren't direct, you can move them into a direct loan and then apply and qualify for that.
Right.
So that's a great point. Another one of the qualifications, they have to be, certain types of student loans. Private student loans do not make you
Right.
eligible for this. They are not
and
forgivable.
you can't move those.
Yeah.
Right.
So There are the qualifications there of the loan type and stuff
Yeah.
like that, but there are steps that they've allowed you to be able to do to make yourself eligible,
Right.
Would make those loans eligible.
Right.
So, again, one of the reasons we like doing this videos is to help educate people on their options, right? So this is a newer option. It's been out since October of 2021. It's we're going to say expire October 2022, but they're also talking about making these changes permanent. So that's something to think about, that if you're like, oh, I don't know if I can get it done by October, well, you've got a couple months. We should be able to get you to that point, but also there's a possibility they're going to make it permanent. So we need to start that process and figure out, hey, are you eligible? If you're eligible, we got to get your application in. We got to get you in this process and get you started.
Yeah, and it's my understanding when they do the letter, so you get everything in, you get your employer, things in, they're starting to verify everything. They'll send you a letter that says, okay, you've made 60 payments of 120, so you have 60 left, and they keep track of that from that point on because you have filled out that
So
application.
does that put you in the system?
That puts you in the system.
So at
now-
120, would your loan be forgivable?
Yes.
Okay, so when we say the 120 qualification, you could be partial,
Yeah.
but then in the future reach the 120
Right.
and have the loan forgiven.
Right. You'll have to still verify employment because you could have changed jobs, but
Sure.
still been, you still could have
Making
qualified, but you're at a different place of employment. So you'll still have to do that last part of paperwork, but you'll be in the system. My daughter works for IU Medical. I've got helping her fill that form out. She'll get it in there. Let's say she's made 40 payments. She'll just, if she stays in the field she's in or stays what she's doing, even if it's at a different place, she'll be in the system. They'll have track of what she had, and then she'll have to verify the rest.
Yeah, I was unaware of that. That's an awesome option to have. It's not like October 2022. There's just a chopping block. It's no, we need to get you in the system, get you in the process, and get you tracking. So when you reach that 120.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Because there's all this talk about loan forgiveness out there, and people are always like, oh, they should or shouldn't be done or whatever, and kind of gets to be a controversial topic. But when you're talking about public service,
Sure.
right, I think a lot of people agree that, hey, we need people doing public service, so this is kind of, an incentive for people to stay doing that, get in that line of work and go to work for these 501c3s or nonprofits or stuff like that. So.
Right. A lot of times, I guess some would say they might be underpaid. So this is an incentive for people to stay in that area or to be a public servant. So.
Right. So let's talk about one of the other qualifications, right? This states that you need to be in a qualified repayment plan. So let's talk about that real quick. What is a qualified repayment plan?
So a qualified repayment plan is like an income-driven payment plan where you finish school, you have all your loans, and you fill out paperwork to be on an income-driven payment plan. So most people coming out of college or coming out of school, you are making less money as you start out, and as you work, you make more money. So that income-driven payment plan says, okay, based on your income, you send in a tax return. And especially coming out of college, that first year's tax return is usually a lot lower. So your payment is very low. Then the next year they have you send in your tax return, and now you've made a little more money. Your payment goes up a little bit, and then every year it's probably likely going to go up or at least stay the same. And after 10 years, that loan is forgiven based on income payment. So you don't want to pay extra on those. That's why you're in the income-driven payment plan. Now, if you've paid off that loan, then there might not be that much left to forgive, but there may be. It just depends on how much money you've made over those 10 years. And that's what kind of plan it's talking about. In a plan, something like that, an income-driven plan. You've gotten with the loan people, you've said you want to do that application. And that's one of the things that's been waived for, until October, is you can still qualify and not been in an income-driven plan.
Yeah, but we feel more than likely you need to get into the income-driven plan.
Yes, unless this becomes permanent where you don't have to, but as far as, let's say you just got out of school or you've been out a year or two, you can still do it, an income-driven plan. There's other plans that you might be able to get into, but there's some that are excluded also. So that's something you would want to check into. But that you would go into the income-driven plan, and you would get that started. The sooner the better, because your 120 payments is going to start once you are in that plan.
Right. So plans that don't qualify, like if you're in school, if you've got a graduated plan, extended plan, a standard plan, those do not qualify you. You must be in an income-driven repayment plan.
Or yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So private ones don't count, do not qualify you,
Right.
but you can also, there might be something else that you can do with private
Right.
plans, like consolidate to get a lower rate.
Right. Consolidate, refinance. Yeah, there are definitely options there that you should take a look at. It's very important for you to investigate the process and get involved and let the government tell you you're not eligible. Because they have relaxed a lot of the rules, and they've changed a lot of the rules. And so there's a possibility you may qualify, but you don't know that, right? Because there are so many nuances that they've changed on these rules. So apply, and just figure out whether you are or not. You have to go through the process to learn all of this, right?
Right.
And every person's situation is going to be different when they go through this, right? It's not going to be, Andrea and I just talked about this in the last video. You can't throw out a blanket statement and be like, everybody should go do this, right? Each individual person needs to go through it and be like, hey, does this work for me? Does this make sense?
Right.
I would love to have my loans forgiven in, 10 more years or, 120 payments. But does that make sense? Right? Is it, do I qualify? Does it make mathematical sense?
And I think let the government tell you if you don't. I mean, fill it out, get it sent in, see what your number of payments are, and let them tell you what you need to do. Because they've been, so far that I've been told, is it's pretty much step by step. They did this, then they got their letter. Then they did the next part, then they got another letter. And they got, they just kept going through the steps. And it took a few months, but they got it done.
Right.
The other thing to be very careful about, and it just made me think of this, was several years ago, I mean, it came out in 2007, but a lot of people didn't know about it for a while. But I remember back in 15 and 16, I had a client that had gotten a call from someone that said, hey, we can help you sign up for loan forgiveness. So she paid a fee for it. So she paid a fee to have them help her get set up on it. And then, she was a nurse, so she was on that program. Well, this is through the government. There's no fee. You don't need to pay a fee for this. You just need to, there's just companies that always try to take advantage of things like, oh, we can help you do this and we're going to charge you $1,000. Well, it's free. So just don't fall into that where somebody says, oh, I'll help you do this. No, you just do it through, the website, through the government. Don't try to have somebody help you with it. That's going to charge you.
Unfortunately, in our industry, we run across situations all the time, right, where we're like, hey, be careful of scammers. Hey, be careful, unscrupulous business people. Because you're correct, there are going to be people out there who are like, hey, pay me $1,000 and I'll help walk you through this. When it wouldn't have cost you anything to do it.
Right.
It does take some time and effort, right? But yeah, you don't have to pay somebody to get into this program. It's a great point. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
But we do run across that all the time. Also, something during the pandemic that's changed for a lot of people is who their loan servicer is. So even in this program, it's about to switch loan servicers. So it's important that you stay up to date with, hey, I know this company has been my loan servicer historic, but those are all changing. So I shouldn't say they're all changing. Several of them are changing. So please be aware of that and make sure that you're working with the right people to get all of your loans and make sure that they're all qualified if they do qualify and all of that stuff. So there's a lot going on with student loans right now. So
yeah, I would just say if you have any questions or you need us to help get you a link because maybe you can't find it, just give us a call, email, reach out, and we'll kind of help you and walk you, at least get you started on it.
Now, Angie's contact information will be at the end of the video. And again, Brett Rice, Angie Sodrel, Core Vision Financial Group, coming to you today, talk to you about public student loan forgiveness and how to get that process started. Some of the do's and don'ts of that process. So again, thanks for watching. Go to our YouTube channel. subscribe. We'd really appreciate that. Again, thanks for taking time and watching the video. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.